Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Crosswires. It's James here, and today we're taking a look at audio production, or rather audio recording. As you all know, this show is recorded on Squadcast, but behind the scenes, I have to connect this mic into something to record, and then that has to process the audio, send it up to Squadcast. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, audio interfaces. Now, don't run away scared, because I know that when most of you think of audio interfaces, you think of big boxes with lots of dials, lots of inputs, lots of settings that you can mess up and make your audio sound less than ideal. But my guest today is Dan Hughley from Focusrite, who are possibly one of the biggest names in audio interfaces. And in fact, my very first audio interface was a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 40. It was a huge rack mount 20 in, 20 out audio interface that ran over good old Firewire. Please welcome Dan to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So, audio interfaces. Would you say it's fair that for most people they are quite daunting?
Thinking about the Sapphire Pro 40, that was my first audio interface as well. And yeah, 20 in, 20 out, there were, knobs and buttons all across that thing. To most podcasters getting started, that's pretty intimidating. I was just coming out of music school. I went to school for audio engineering, so, I was able to break that down and understand all of that. But yeah, that can be quite daunting to somebody that's just getting started in music production or podcast production.
Absolutely. So before we dive into what Focusrite are bringing to the table and maybe looking at how the world of audio interfaces has maybe changed a little bit, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Dan? Obviously, you mentioned you went to school for audio engineering, but what's the rest of your story?
Sure. And it's funny, I never meant to go to school for audio engineering. I went for keyboard performance and then quickly realized I have stage fright and can't really play in front of people. So, I had to make a quick shift there because I'm spending a lot of money on college. So I went for audio engineering and just kind of fell in love with production, all of the things behind the scenes, creating sounds and manipulating sounds, things like that. And then that got me into... I worked for a guitar player, a Grammy-winning guitar player right out of school. That was really cool. And then I went to work for a company called Manly Labs, which makes really great mic pre's and processing equipment. So I worked there for a while, and I got into sales and marketing at that point. And my background made me relevant and gave me the ability to talk about signal flow and music and audio products with the customers and media and dealer partners and things like that.
Awesome. So it sounds like you're a perfect fit for a role you now have at Focusrite.
Yeah, I'm loving it here. I'm coming up on 6 years, and I kicked off the Focusrite Pro podcast, which I believe we have about 30 episodes. We have really great guests coming on. Alan Parsons is going to be our next guest, which is incredible. We're going to talk about his new album. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. And then I started out my own personal show as well, which I'm between seasons on at the moment, but that'll be back shortly.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. What a wonderful story. And a little bit of a primer on Focusrite. Traditionally, I think it's fair to say that Focusrite have been one of the companies making the wonderfully powerful, but also, as we talked about with the Sapphire Pro 40, somewhat complicated audio interfaces. And I think, is it fair to say the majority of Focusrite's sort of pre-Vocaster range would maybe be more desirable for musicians than necessarily podcasters? Is that a fair...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's very fair. We've been a music company since 1985. If you think back to then, Rupert Neve and George Martin started the company because George Martin wanted a no expense spared recording console made, and then the 9 Focusrite consoles came from that, and now all of that technology from 1985 falls into your Scarlett, and you still get the air mode, which is the impedance switching that was very famous on those original inputs. So yeah, we're a music company in our roots. We're a company full of musicians, but we're also a lot of content creators as well, and storytellers, such as myself. And I'm one of those people behind the scenes that has to remind everybody in the company that, hey, if our mission is to remove barriers to creativity, we have to think of all creatives and not just the musicians. So we've gone from a music company to a content creator company. So we support all types of content creators.
Awesome. And that's where the new Vocaster line comes in. And first of all, I've got to congratulate, what a wonderful name. It kind of it brings back sort of a vibe of 80s synths. Like I've got this, this image in my head of someone in the 80s with hair and stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. The big hair. Like a vocoder. I think it kind of goes right into that word vocoder.
Yes. And these are interfaces that are absolutely geared towards podcasters, streamers, and video creators. And the first thing I want to say about them is they look beautiful, and I just looking at the lineup, they are something that I could see happily on my desk. They actually fit more onto a desk than, say, I feel a little bit treacherous saying this. I'm currently using a competitor's product.
That's okay.
Thank you. Thanks. It's okay. But again, it's a big box. It's got multiple inputs. It's got lots of switches and dials. But it works for what I need, because I've used, I've been podcasting for so long and doing audio production for so long that I'm used to it. But I would trade that in a heartbeat for one of the new Vocasters. Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of where that journey started, where the Vocasters, where the concept came from, and how it's evolved to what we've got today in terms of the Vocaster 1 and 2, and then the studio bundles?
Sure. Like I said, we needed to expand out of just musicians and start speaking to content creators. And the good thing is, Scarlett was already being used by a ton of podcasters. Our friends at Squadcast, which they're literally my friends, they're also partners with us in Vocaster, as they're provided. They have data. If you look and see how many people choose what type of interface to record with, they said Scarlett was by far the most common interface that they would see. So we didn't come into podcasting having to explain to everybody who we are. Luckily, a lot of influencers sang our praises way before we started addressing that market. So I entered in probably about 4 years ago into podcasting and just immersed myself in that world. And I discovered that, there's no one that is making a product that is specifically for podcasters. And this is before Rodecaster Pro, which is what I'm assuming you're using with all the dials and functions.
It's actually that would be a fair assumption. It's not, because I'm going to be really honest, Crosswires Media Group does not have a budget for a Rodecaster Pro, and that's one thing we'll talk about later on is the pricing, because I think you guys at Focusrite really knock it out of the park with that. I'm actually using a Behringer UMC 404 HD, which again, going back to what we were saying about music focused interfaces, it really is a music focused interface because it's got all the sends. Just like the Scarlett do. One thing quickly before we jump back in, I think it's fair to say that probably the Scarlett 2i2 is possibly the most popular podcast audio interface before the Vocaster came along.
Yeah, honestly, Scarlett 2i2 in particular is the best-selling audio interface in the world. And the entire Scarlett range that's in the third generation now, there's almost 5 million of those sold to date. So Scarlett is the most popular interface range in the world. So, it's no surprise that it's so popular and common in podcasting. But when I immersed myself into that world, I saw that there were some gaps that we were not filling, and there was workarounds with Scarlett for podcasters. And Scarlett had things that don't really fit for podcasters, like instrument inputs. You don't really need an instrument input if you're just going to be doing spoken word. And also, Scarlett 2i2 has 2 inputs, but it only has 1 headphone output. So at that point, only one person, if you're doing 2 people in the same room, if you're having that type of interview or conversation, only one of you actually gets to hear the conversation, which to me is troublesome. So there were things like that. And then, SM7B is one of the mics that I use. I rotate through them on occasion. That one really needs a lot of gain, and that was a big complaint. And, in the price point of Scarlett, and even expanding up into higher price points, everybody tops out around between 56 and 59 dB of gain, when the SM7B requires somewhere between 63 and 65, depending on the voice. So there's a cloud lifter needed, or a gain booster, depending on which one you choose for your workflow. So that was another thing. They would buy a Scarlett and buy a microphone and think one or the other is broken because they weren't getting that loud professional signal that they're used to. So those were a couple of the things that I, when I was fighting for this product to become a product, those were two of the line in the sand there. It's like, we have to have these two things. If you have two inputs, you have to have two headphone outputs or more. You have to have enough gain for all microphones. So that's why, things like the headphone outputs are the way they are. And we have 70 dB of gain on Vocaster, which is really great. And it sets itself. It has auto gain, which is a really cool technology that we developed specifically for this product. And I know people out there will say other people did it first, but we didn't buy their product and copy it. We actually started from the ground up and built our own auto gain.
And that comes from, I'm assuming, the Focusrite experience of, driving different microphones, of your interfaces working with, I'd guess, almost every microphone out there at some point in its life has been connected to a Focusrite interface.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And just myself, I have 4 or 5 mics that I rotate through, depending on my mood. Most of them, I don't know if the video, people won't see this on audio, but I have boxes stacked behind me. I'm getting ready to move houses, and all of my other mics are packed up, so I'm just using this one today. But yeah, usually I rotate through a few different mics, and yeah, you have to adjust the gain level on each and every one of those.
And just so that we're really clear for people who might not understand the difference between gain and level, we're talking about gain as in the amount of, how's the best way to put this? Well, in fact, I'll let you're the audio engineer.
It's the amount of amplification. So to me, gain speaks to input, and level or volume speaks to output to me. So gain is, like, I'll break it down a little bit. Like, when I'm speaking right now, there's an electrical current that is coming out of my mouth that hits the diaphragm on the microphone and causes vibrations. It's a very, very low level electrical signal that then travels through the microphone cable and into the input of the audio interface. And that's where the gain staging happens. And what that does is that boosts the electrical signal caused by the vibration of the diaphragm in the microphone to a level that is workable in the computer. And it also converts. So that's the other thing. It converts the analog signal that goes through the cable into a digital signal that the computer can then recognize, and then you can manipulate it in your editing software.
And that, as you said, that's really important. Getting that right means you're driving the microphone correctly. Your voice is sounding the best it can be. If you spent money on an SM7B, you want to know that it's set correctly. So I'm just using I think I've mentioned this in previous shows, I'm using an Electro Voice ND767A right now. And it's a great mic for my voice. It's certainly better than, for me at least, it's better than a Blue Yeti Pro, which I've had connected to this interface. And that's another thing, of course, that that is something that needs to be there in interfaces if you're talking condenser mics, is phantom power. And sometimes that can be complicated to tell whether or not that's switched on. But one thing I've seen straight away from the Vocaster's pictures is there's a nice big 48 volt indicator, but it says, you've turned this on.
Yeah, right on the front of it. And, one thing that Vocaster does that, a lot of others are of our interfaces. We have phantom power that turns it on either for the whole interface or in banks for some of the larger channel count interfaces. You can actually turn on phantom power for one channel or the other, and you can do that right on the unit, or you can do that in the Vocaster Hub software, which is a really powerful piece of software that we have. The cool thing about Vocaster, and something that we haven't done since pre the Sapphire Pro 40 days, we're talking about like the Liquid 56 or something like that, which was just before that. We have DSP on board. We haven't had DSP on board any interface, in like a decade. So that's been resolved now, and all of the mixing and all of the channels, and I'll get into, I think we've only talked about a couple inputs and outputs, so we'll have to get into how a Vocaster 2 has 14 inputs. How is that even possible? But, all of those are mixed in the Vocaster Hub software, and the software is controlling the unit itself. So all that DSP is on your unit. So if you want, You can set everything up in the hub software, and then you don't need it anymore. If you like the way that mix sounds, great. You can send your show mix to your DAW, your recording software, and you're done. But if you want to manipulate all of those 14 different channels, yeah, you can do that as well.
Brilliant. And of course, now this is a USB-C based interface. So one question, and I'm sorry to surprise you with this one, but how does this then translate to working with, for example, the iPad Pros and iPad Airs?
Oh, that's a great question. If an iPad has a USB-C connection, it works seamlessly. I've demoed it a couple of times with that. Yeah, just using GarageBand, because GarageBand is a free piece of software that you get, and you can record very easily. We've showed that off at a couple of the events that we've been at recently, using an iPad. I think we were using iPad Air. Officially,
the 4th gen.
Yeah, officially our statement is iPad Pro, but in my personal experience, it worked fine with an iPad Air.
It's an interesting one. The iPad Air is, of course, now running the M1 chip. They have all that power. They have a lot more bandwidth. But, hey, it works. And you mentioned GarageBand, and, of course, I'll shout out the team at Vocaster who make Ferrite, which now does support multi-channel inputs, which is so cool. So this is a great interface. Unlike, say, for example, the interface I have right now, which is USB-A and is USB-B on the host side, on the interface side, because the Vocasters are USB-C, it's a lot easier to connect them to almost any device that supports USB-C.
Yeah, and to note, in the box, you're going to get a cable that's USB-C to USB-A. So if you have a USB-C computer, you would just need an adapter, or you can get a C-to-C cable very, very easily. Somehow I had like 8 of them in my bag. I have no idea how those all ended up in my backpack, but if you've been in audio long enough, you have a collection of cables that you can dig through, but then you still end up buying one and then finding the one that you needed about a minute after you receive the other one from Amazon.
Absolutely. Like, unpack the new cable and the old one. I'm like, oh, that's where all my XLR cables went to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. So we've got the Vocaster range. Let's start with the Vocaster 1 in terms of its inputs and its outputs from a hardware standpoint. And then maybe we can talk about some of the cool things that the Vocaster Hub can do, because, again, seeing this on screenshots, it just looks fantastic. And it does remind me of the old... was it Mix Control on the Pro 40?
Yeah, the Sapphire Mix Control, or it could be Focusrite Control on the current units. So Vocaster 1 and 2 are very similar. The real big difference between the two of them is the number of inputs and the number of headphone outputs. So Vocaster 1, like the name says, it has 1 input, 1 headphone output. Vocaster 2 has 2 inputs and outputs. So I'll get into one other difference between the two, but first I'll walk through some of the cool stuff with Vocaster. So Vocaster 1, it's very simple. You have 2 knobs on the front. One of them controls your gain. The other one controls your headphones. So one's input, one's output. So your gains and your levels. And it has your speakers and your headphones. So if you plug in a pair of studio monitors like I have, they're both on the same control, which that might seem a little bit troublesome to you, but in the Vocaster Hub software, there's a mute button for your speakers. So you can just hit that. So when you have your headphones and you're using your headphones to record like we are now, you can mute your speakers. So you don't have to unplug things. The other way around, you do have to unplug your headphones, if you're just listening to monitors. Otherwise, signal would go through. So then when you want to get started, I'm looking at the unit now, and there's 3 buttons on the front of it, and that's it. So there's 3 buttons and 2 knobs to make it very simple. The first button that you're going to see, it looks like a couple of boxes, like, stacked one above the other. It looks like stairs going up to the right. That's your selection. So that button, you press it and you talk for about 10 seconds and it'll set your gain for you. So you just talk into the microphone. There'll be a little timer that goes around. And as soon as that timer times out, your gain level will be set for you. And 9 times out of 10 with myself, it does it really well. The times that it's not doing it really well for me is when I have poor mic technique. When I'm on a Zoom call and I really don't care that I'm, a few feet away from my microphone, that's the only time it doesn't really work for me. But have good mic technique like I see you are right now, and hopefully I am as well. Another button on the front, it looks like a little magic wand, and that's exactly what it is. It's the enhance button. And what that does on the unit itself is it toggles on and off the Enhance tool. And the Enhance tool basically has 4 different presets in the software that you can select. A clean voice, a warm voice, a bright voice, and my favorite is the radio voice, which I'll go ahead and engage right now. So now I probably sound a little bit more like a radio type of sound that you're used to.
What's the top 40 hits at the moment, please, Dan? We've got to get into the music chart. And you can.
I got to get back to music. I've been entrenched in the podcast world, so I'm going to be getting back. But yeah, so the Enhance button is cool, and little spoiler alert: in the future, those are going to be user programmable. So right now, all 4 are presets, but in the future, you're going to be able to change the settings and. The settings that are into that, so that's 3 pieces of software, or I'm sorry, onboard DSP. So the first thing is a high pass filter, and that just rolls off some of that low end rumble that you might have. And then there's a 3-band EQ, which is really the nuts and bolts of shaping each of those 4 presets. And then finally at the end, there's a compressor to make sure that if you get dynamic during your conversations, if you start to laugh loud or anything like that, if you get a little animated and shout, it just tries to keep it so you're not compressing. Or I'm sorry, so you're not clipping.
And that's something that typically you would have to do in post-production as an editor and try and, do that. But obviously, if that's happening on board with DSP, so digital signal processing, that means that the audio that you're getting, so you might be recording on Squadcast, as Dan is now, which means that the audio coming through from Dan is going through the Vocaster. You're using a Vocaster. I think you're using a Vocaster 2 at the moment, right?
I am. Yeah, that's that's the one that's available to me. So I have the Vocaster 2. Just
curious, and I'm looking at this. Looking at the video on my homepage right now, and you really can see what Dan's talking about, how simple it is, and how. One thing I just wanted to mention from a hardware point of view that I absolutely love is compared with, say, your traditional audio interfaces. Now I'm going to include the Scarletts in this. The Scarletts are very much, all of your indicators and all of your dials are facing, are on like the front panel, and you really have to glance down and sort of, hang on, like I'm doing there. Whereas on the Vocaster, it's on the raised surface. So at a glance, you can see what you're recording without having to really stare or, probably more importantly, take your focus away from your content.
Yeah, it's on the top there. It's a very user friendly interface. The touch and the feel of it. It was very purposely built, and the buttons themselves, they're nice. They give you a nice response, and they feel nice. They're kind of rubbery. And they're kind of shaped like your finger, so it's really easy just to reach over and hit the buttons. And yeah, the knobs and the dials, they all feel really nice as well. And we've really only touched on kind of some of the basics, the minimums of any audio interface, and it's capable of so much more than we've talked about.
Am I right as well? That third button is a mic mute button, so if you have to cough, you've got an instant.
Right. A little earlier, I know I have a very noisy chair. So when I had to fix my posture, so it was very easy. I was listening to you talk, and to your point, I was able to reach over, and I know the mute button is the first one on the left, so I hit that button and fixed my posture. I heard the squeaks on my end, but you didn't hear anything on your end, and that didn't get captured in the recording.
And I didn't hear a mute. I didn't hear any sort of audio signal drop, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Which is a big deal.
It is. And that speaks to how quiet the interface is as far as the signal to noise ratio. So you would have noticed if I would have hit mute and if there was any type of hiss or any type of noise, you would have heard that go away, and then you would have heard it come back. But in this situation, like you said, it was a very clean mute. You didn't even know I did it.
So carry on, because there's obviously so much to go through. This is really exciting. I have to admit, I'm really enjoying just hearing how this works, because as I said earlier, I've heard of a Vocaster. Zach and the team at Squadcast really, you guys did a partner event, and I, straight was excited. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on my show is to really promote this and get a bit of a deeper dive. So please do continue.
Sure. Those were the basics we wanted to cover, was just, making sure that it was easy to use. And I think I said our mission as a company is to remove barriers to creativity. And part of that is to not make technology, keep you from using technology. And so when you turn the unit to the back, that's when you see the inputs and outputs, the actual physical connections. And there's a bunch of them. There's more than you might expect. So on the Vocaster 1, starting at the top, you'll see like a little icon that looks like your phone. And the really cool thing you can do there is connect your smartphone via a TRRS cable, and that's important that you have TRRS because it becomes two-way communication. So you can take phone calls and record them separately into your DAW, which is really great, or your whatever recording software you're using, and it gets its own channel. So both host and guest, you can edit them separately, you can mix them separately, and there's a mix minus that's already introduced. So that's something, if you're a podcaster, you might not know what that means, but in the old days, we used to have to do all kinds of crazy stuff to get a mix minus introduced. It just happens now. It just is automatic. So you can then record phone calls, but also you can record to apps through that phone connection. And that means like if you want to go onto like TikTok and take your computer audio onto TikTok, you plug it in, you open the app, and you go onto TikTok, and it's already done. You don't have to set or change anything. Same thing with Instagram or Clubhouse or whatever app on your phone that you want to go to. You can bring in computer audio. And how that could work is what I did to test this. Like, I'm not a TikToker or anything like that. I'm far too old. I went onto TikTok. I have an account. And what I wanted to do was try out bringing my computer sound and recording it. So I just played some music from Spotify, and I quote unquote sang along with that music. And I will say the audio quality was spectacular. The vocal quality was just garbage because I am definitely not a vocalist.
Oh no, me neither.
But and it was really cool because in the Vocaster Hub software, I was able to mix that and get that computer audio mixed by myself into the app. And that's a side case. Like, that's something that Vocaster wasn't created for, unintended use, but I can see it being used for that quite a bit in the future.
Well, especially, there's a YouTube Shorts, and I think we're on TikTok as well, channel, Alex and Melinda Griswold, who are I've mentioned them before on the show, but the mum and dad of the internet. And you can see they're using, and apologies for mentioning the R word, but they're using another company's pod mic.
That's all right.
Great mic. And they have it in, but I wonder how they're doing that. Whereas if they had a Vocaster, all they need to do is plug that TRRS cable into their phone and film, and they're getting not only the great quality microphones that they've got connected, but also they can play back computer audio. They might have, their audio sting. So, for example, Rogue Amoeba's Farrago, the soundboard app, you can very quickly play stuff like that back and make your audio, because you know what? Video is important, but I think as we can probably both agree, if you have really horrible audio on your video, people aren't going to be interested. We're going to tune away.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And another thing you can do with that connection is, if you have that app on your iPad, you can have that open. You can trigger sounds through that as well. So that could be a different use case for that auxiliary input that you have, the TRRS. So, you have that, and you can use that as your soundboard and trigger sounds for your show through that. The other thing that you're going to notice is kind of on the bottom, it's a little button that looks like a camera. There's a little camera icon, and it has a 3.5 millimeter jack there. And that's a TRS connection. So it's sending a line level signal out to your camera. So if you're doing video and you have your DSLR camera looking at you, you can have the line output of the Vocaster going to the line input. And it's important you go to a line input and not a mic input, because the mic input always introduces noise on a camera. Whereas you go into a line input, it's just expecting the level of signal that Vocaster is sending out. So you're not going to get any more amplification through the camera. And that's really great, because then it syncs up with your video on your camera. So you can then you just take that sound or that card out of your camera, put it in your computer, your audio and your video are synced up. You don't have to then start grabbing files from other places and making sure they're synced up. And the cool thing, it records simultaneously. So you could be recording to your camera and to your recording software on your computer at the same time. And that gives you a backup just in case, one fails. Computers do that. Computers glitch. So do cameras.
But I guess if you're doing an audio show and a video show, and you're maybe not using Squadcast, because of course Squadcast records a video as well, you might be doing just an in-person show. That means that you've got your wonderfully recorded audio, say for example through something like Hindenburg or through Rogue Amoeba's Audio Hijack. You've got that from a podcast, and then without any extra effort, you've got a video file with the same great quality audio. I assume with all the DSP effects intact, so it's exactly what is going on through the Vocaster straight onto the video. So that reduces, again, we go back to accessibility and making it easier. That reduces your post-production time.
Right, and I should note that it is going to be mixed audio that goes to your camera. So it's going to be your show mix. The main stereo output is going to go to your camera. But if you're not happy with that and you want to do actual mixing, send it. Use that one on your camera as a reference, and that'll show you where you line up the rest of the audio with your video, in case you want to do some mixing. Now, if you want to do some cutting and stuff like that, and actually editing for content, you'd probably want to put in the computer audio, so you don't miss all your cue points and all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. So that really covers Vocaster 1. Though the only big difference between Vocaster 1 and 2, other than the inputs and outputs, is going back to the phone connection. It has two ways to connect to a phone. It has Bluetooth as well. So you can connect your phone via Bluetooth or via the auxiliary 3.5 millimeter input. And that gives you room. Like I said, you can connect your iPad or other iOS device. You can either take two phone calls. So if you have two separate phones, you can take two separate phone calls. Or one can be a phone call, one can be sounds, or you can take sounds from one. Or you can take a call and stream it to an app. There's so many different uses for that, the input and output there. So that all adds up to, I think we're probably at about 10 inputs for Vocaster. So those other 4, they're 2 stereo channels of loopback. And those are just in the computer. Like we're doing right now on Squadcast. Locally, I'm recording myself on a single track, and I'm also recording your voice on a single track using the loopback. So loopback input, just put it in. Hindenburg is the DAW that I use, which is included with Vocaster. I'm looking right now, and I can see we're both recording on separate channels.
Awesome. And this means you don't need any extra software to record on your computer. You don't need anything else to record, maybe that Zoom call or that Twitch stream or something like that, because you've got those loopbacks. You can pass that through into your DAW. And so do you say there's 2 stereo channels of loopback? Yeah,
there's 2 stereo channels of loopback, so you can just route to either of them. So you might be recording a conversation like we're doing right now, and then maybe you have some background music playing as well. So that could be one of your computer audio channels. So basically it's the computer audio that you're bringing back into the computer, so you can use it in your show and record it live.
So incredible flexibility. So on a Vocaster 2, as we said, we've got 2 mic inputs, 2 stereo loopback, so that brings us up to my mouse 6, then the 2. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of really cool functionality in there. So you're up to 6 there. You have your auxiliary input, that's a stereo pair. Your Bluetooth input, that's another stereo pair. Your guest microphone, so there's another mono. So there's a ton of functionality.
Because of course the TRS and the TRRS can be stereo. So you could even, and correct me if I'm wrong here, if you've got the right cabling, you could plug something like an old cassette deck in and use that in the auxiliary. Yeah,
that would be an easy one actually. A lot of those had like they had a lot of line outs on those, so you could probably plug that into the phone input. And these things aren't dedicated for phones. You can use them for other things. Like the camera out. All it is a line output. You could go into, what I did the other day to try it out was I had a Zoom recorder, and I plugged it into the line input of my Zoom recorder, and then you can record a backup in your Zoom recorder, and then your main recording can be in your computer. Just so you have those backups. What if you're having this interview that you just can't let fail? You have to, you do everything you can to make sure you get copies of everything.
And here's maybe, again, probably not a primary use case, but let's say you're out in the field and you don't have a computer with you, but you do have a Zoom recorder.
Sure.
You could just...
You know what? The problem there, and I have a solution for it too, the problem there is how do you get power into Vocaster? Because Vocaster is bus powered over your computer.
Yes, yeah, true.
You can definitely use it for what you just suggested by getting one of those little battery packs, the ones that we all use to charge our phone.
Mm-hmm.
Plug Vocaster into that. Now it's getting power, and you can record your Vocaster audio onto your camera.
So again, not intended use cases, but real flexibility there for creators. You're out in the field, and let's just be really honest, these are not big devices. These are really nice and portable.
Yeah, it's a very portable device. One thing people, it's funny, the things that people call out as things they like or things they appreciate. The power button. Vocaster has a power button on the back. It's a latching button that, and because of the bus power, you shut down your computer and it's still powered on. And that's one thing that Scarlett doesn't have, is a power button. So one thing I would find myself doing when I was a Scarlett user is unplugging the USB cable every day, because I just didn't want power going to my microphone when I'm not using my microphone. And that's great with Vocaster, because all I do is, at the end of the day, I power down my speakers, and then I power down Vocaster, just in case there's a little pop there. I don't want to hear that. Mm-hmm. And then at the beginning of the day, I reverse that. So it's really nice to have that power button.
My current interface does not have a power button, so if I need to hard cycle it for some reason, I have to unplug its mains power and its USB bus to fully power cycle it. So yeah, that is a huge, because look, things happen. I'm not saying obviously there's anything wrong with the Vocasters, but things happen more so with the operating system's audio system. Like the number of times I've had to reset core audio, maybe not so much recently, but in the past, whereas just hard power cycling the Vocaster via a dedicated power button is so much simpler. So we've got two great products. Before we move on to the Vocaster Hub software, let's quickly talk about, because they can be sold just as the interfaces, but you also do bundles, which, as someone starting out in podcasting, I think these are wonderfully accessible kits.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so, Vocaster 1 and Vocaster 2 come in studio bundles. So it'd be called Vocaster 1 Studio or Vocaster 2 Studio. And really what that adds is the complete package, minus one thing. And I'll get to that one thing, and there's a good reason why it's minus one thing. You get a microphone, and it's a broadcast-ready microphone. With Vocaster 1 Studio, you get something that resembles a handheld dynamic microphone. So, if you've seen a Shure SM58, the handheld microphone that's, as synonymous with microphones as Scarlett is with audio interfaces.
Absolutely.
Great microphone. And that's a really good mic. But then with and you get headphones and you get an XLR cable as well. Vocaster 2 Studio has a bit more premium of a mic. You get something that resembles, they want to say like a Shure SM7B. I think it resembles like the MV7 of Shure. If look-wise, sound-wise, they sound a bit different. But it's a bit more premium of a microphone, so it adds a little bit more cost. But you still get headphones and a cable and microphone with the Vocaster 2 Studio.
And just to be clear, it's just one microphone and one set of headphones on a Vocaster 2.
Correct. Yeah. And that's really because the customer that we assume is going to be buying something like Vocaster, we are assuming that they already have a microphone. They're probably someone that's upgrading from a USB microphone, hopefully one that has an XLR output, so they have two mics. But in the future, and this we're probably going to sell the microphones by themselves. So if someone wants a matching set of the Vocaster 2 mic, headphones, and all of that, we're going to sell those separately as well.
Awesome. And I'm so glad to see that it's included headphones, because it's something that I think a lot of people forget, that when you're recording podcasts, I'm wearing in-ears just because of the way my hearing works. But people forget, you need decent headphones really to record with, so you're not getting sound leaks into your microphone. So it's great to have it included. It's great to have the XLR cable included, because, again, if you're coming from a world of USB mics, let's say, for example, a Blue Yeti. Let's say that you're upgrading from a Blue Yeti. That is, unless you've got a Yeti Pro, that is an exclusively USB mic. So having everything in one package.
Yeah, it really helps to have it all in the one package. Like a good one that I like is the ATR 2100 from Audio-Technica, or the Samson Q2U. Those are really great, inexpensive microphones. So if you're getting started in podcasting, under $100, you have a microphone that plugs right into your computer. But, it's instantly upgradable when you buy something like a Scarlett or a Vocaster. Yeah. It will sound better when you plug it into a professional audio interface via XLR.
These have XLR, as you said, as well as the USB, particularly that the Audio-Technica does, which is awesome. Now, you said there's one thing that's missing. What don't you get?
you don't get a mic stand or a boom arm. And that's because we could have easily put like a little desktop stand in the box, but we wanted it to be a personal choice. Not everybody wants a desktop mic stand, and we didn't want to put something in there that's going to end up in a landfill. Because we're being very environmentally conscious as a company, and especially with this product. One of the things you'll notice is the enclosure that it's in is a very nice hard plastic, and half of those plastics are recycled at this point. And in the future, we're going to get up to about 85% recycled plastics as we continue down this Vocaster road. All of the packaging that Vocaster comes in, so when you buy it, the boxes, everything that's in the box, all either recyclable or compostable. So it's kind of a weird thing to me that the bag that Vocaster comes in, it feels like a plastic bag, but you can throw it in your garden and it'll help your tomatoes grow. So it's really kind of cool that we're being environmentally conscious with this product, and that's why we didn't want to include some kind of mic stand. We didn't want something that if someone didn't like it, it would just end up in the trash.
Because as you say, everyone's got personal choice. You might want just a cheap little stand, or you might want to go something. I think we're both using. You're using my high alarm, I can see, and I'm using. Keep having to mention Rode today. I do apologise. I'm using my Rode PSA 1 arm, and you know what? It works.
Yeah.
As you said, personal choice, and that's awesome. And from a Crosswire's point of view, as we look at people having a positive impact into technology, it's so encouraging to hear tech companies say, yeah, we want to be environmentally responsible. So things like packaging matter. A number of times I bought products, I'm like, this really didn't need these 45 different bags just for one product.
No.
So that's really good.
Oh, just one more thing on that. It's actually made me more conscious of the environment as well. And in my personal life, it's made me make more decisions that are more responsible for the future generations. I don't have kids myself, but other people do, and I want there to be a beautiful planet for them to inherit.
Absolutely. And I suppose before we move on to a Vocaster Hub, there is one elephant in the room we should probably discuss.
Oh no, what's that?
Well, you mentioned your competitor, the one that people sort of got very excited about.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about the Vocaster Pro, and on two levels. First of all, maybe just being really honest about the differences, but also talking more about, because we haven't talked about pricing yet. I think, honestly, the Vocasters are more accessible to new creators than maybe the Vocaster Pro. But let's talk a little bit about differences. And we can be really honest. I think the one thing I want to just say for everyone, there's plenty of space in the industry for everyone's products, and people have, as we said earlier, have personal choice. So this isn't, we're not by any means bashing Rode, and I would like to think in the future, if I ever had anyone from Rode on, we would not bash Focusrite, but there we go.
No, I have a great relationship with the local Rode rep, and he and I actually, at events, there was a time that it was a podcasting event. He brought someone over to my table and showed them Scarlett 2i2, and he looked me in the eyes and said, not everybody needs 4 inputs. And I agree with that. I cannot agree with that more. I feel like Rode is a competitor. Rodecaster Pro is a competitor for Mindspace and for things like that. But as far as feature to feature, they're very different. Even think of it, and this guy had it right. Not everybody needs 4 inputs. I'm doing great with 2. I'm only using one of my inputs. I'd be great with a Vocaster 1 if this was, if this was my own personal setup. Which it is, but this is a loaner unit that I have. I haven't bought my own yet, which I just inquired about today. I'll be buying my own very soon. But no, there's a lot of different things with Rodecaster Pro. I owned one myself. I don't have it anymore. Just space wise, like I said, I'm moving. I needed to make space in the house, and it's quite large. It's not portable. So, if I want to on the surface have some negatives, I could probably point to 2. And one is the size of it. It just took up so much space on my desk, and I loved the feel of the faders and all of that. The only thing, as an audio nerd myself, I didn't love having to menu dive to do things like adjust the noise gate and the EQ and the compression. I don't know if that's been fixed in the new version, so it's not fair for me to say that that's always going to be a problem. But yeah, it's a nice looking product, and I know a lot of people are celebrating that one. But to me, we don't really compete with Rodecaster. I think just because it's another podcast product, this is just another option. Vocaster is another option, and a really great option for those who want a small footprint and want 1 to 2 channels rather than up to 4 channels. And
again, it goes back to complexity on the Vocasters. Although, the Rodecaster Pro has those lovely faders and it has the pads for all your sound bites, you might not need that, especially if you're just doing a show like we're doing here. I'm not playing any sound effects in. It's just me and Dan having a chat, and that's the whole purpose of Crosswise, is to have a chat with awesome people. And for me, a Vocaster is the perfect fit because I don't need all of that functionality. The other thing, of course, to mention is that they are at very different price points.
They are. What is? I think Rodecaster Pro comes in at like $600 or $700. Yeah. Vocaster 2 is in the US is $299, and Vocaster 1 is $199. So much lower on the price point scale, and really great sounding interfaces.
And again, as we discussed earlier, if you're looking at these on the surface thinking, it's only got one mic input, it's got one headphone out, and you're trying to compare it to a similar Scarlett, you need to probably look beyond just the actual inputs and look at the software and look at the functionality, because as Dan said, Scarletts don't have loopbacks, as far as I'm aware.
No, that's in Scarlett 2i2 and Solo, which are probably the most popular with podcasters, maybe 18i8. Yeah, you don't have loopback. And then when you look at the included software with Scarlett, you get an incredible value. There's the Hitmaker expansion that comes with Scarlett. It's like $1,300 in software and plugins, but it is 100% music focused. When you look at Vocaster, you get about a $650 value in included software, but it's all podcast and content creator and storyteller focused. So it's the right tools across the board. And honestly, if you buy one of the studio bundles, you have everything you need except that boom arm or that mic stand to get yourself started. You have Squadcast, which we mentioned. You get 3 months of free Squadcast on their top tier plan. You get 3 months of Hindenburg Pro, but you also get a lifetime subscription to Hindenburg Lite. So you're going to have that recording and editing software for life. And then finally, you get a subscription to Acast as well for 3 months to their influencer plan. So that's hosting and monetization. So right out of the box, you're already recording and editing. You're recording remote interviews, and then you're hosting it on the RSS feeds, going out to Spotify and to Apple Music and all those different places. And then Acast has some great tools for monetization as well. So yeah, it's really a complete package.
So you really are getting up and running with your podcast with that one purchase, that one Vocaster purchase, be it Vocaster 1, Vocaster 2, or the studio bundles, and they're fantastic. Now, in terms of, before we sort of start wrapping up, tell us a little bit about Vocaster Hub, because you've sort of hinted at what it can do, but this is effectively the computer-based control panel for Vocaster. Does it have any more tricks up its sleeve?
It's very, it really doesn't. It's a very simple online user interface. The big things that it does a lot of the same things. So you can mute, you can turn on and off the enhance feature, and you can process auto gain. So you can press the auto gain button in the Hub software. But really the only thing that you can do here in the software that you can't do on the interface is choose which of the enhance tools. So you can select clean, warm, bright, or radio. But then mixing at the bottom. So you're controlling the mixer on all of the different levels. You can't do that on the hardware itself. So if you want to have that show mix come out that's perfectly mixed, you have to have the software open. If you're going to manipulate it, if you're going to edit and mix in your DAW or your recording software like Hindenburg, like I'm going to, then you just leave everything, and you don't focus on that. You just focus on your conversation.
Probably a very silly question at this point, but I would assume this is on the software supports on Mac and Windows right now.
Yes, it is. It's class compliant. It's a great device that's very easy to use on both Mac and Windows.
Excellent. And because it's class compliant, although you won't be able to use Vocaster Hub, you would be able to use it on a Linux machine. If you were that nerdy and wanted to, you'd still have access to all of the actual channels if you know how to use a Linux audio system, which I don't.
No, I don't either. I haven't heard Linux in a couple of years now, but yeah, it should work.
Awesome. And this is, again, just to wrap up, this is a perfect interface if you're a podcaster, if you're a Twitch streamer, because again, Twitch streaming, you want a good quality microphone, but you also want to be able to have those loopbacks going in, maybe from your game capture, things like that. The possibilities with this Vocaster range are endless, and as we said, the price points are really reasonable. Again, compared with, when you look at all that you're getting, the $199 price point for the Vocaster 1, yes, it's more expensive than a Scarlett, but it's more focused on your needs as a podcaster, as a content creator, and I definitely recommend having a look at it.
No, I definitely agree with you. And if you think about it, that increase in price, just think about, you don't have to buy a gain booster, which would cost you $100 to $150. If that saves you money there. You don't have to pay for all of the software. You get that free software that's very focused. So it might be a little bit more expensive, but like you said, yeah, it's made for what you're doing as a podcaster. Absolutely.
And look, if you're doing this is something where you want to eventually monetize, making that initial investment, believe me, your listeners will thank you. It's something I, really try and strive for on this show. And by the way, please do let me know if you think my audio sucks or it needs work. Tell me, because I want to hear. I'm always trying to improve the audio on this podcast, so please do provide feedback. Dan, where can people find out more about the Focusrite range, including the Vocaster? And if we have got any budding musicians out there, there's plenty of Focusrite goodies on the music side, like the Scarlett, and then you can step all the way up into really high-end interfaces like the Claret Plus, and just some gorgeous, gorgeous gear.
Yeah, you can always go to Focusrite.com. For Vocaster, it would be Focusrite.com/Vocaster. But yeah, you have tools for every different audio job, from Scarlett and Vocaster and Claret Plus up into the Focusrite Pro ranges, which is like Red interfaces, which are our flagship interfaces for the whole brand, and then RedNet, which is audio over IP, and then ISA, which is our mic pre's, that are heritage mic pre's that go back to those ISA studio consoles from back in the 80s.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, apart from a website, Dan, are Focusrite on any of those good old-fashioned social media platforms that people keep talking about?
Yeah, of course. I've heard of these things, and I'm told that they're going to catch on. Yeah, we're on all the social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of them. We're either at Focusrite or at We Are Focusrite, depending on which platform you're on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and I do hope everyone's found this episode useful. One thing just to say, just for disclaimer, there has been no sort of paid promotion here. This is entirely... Actually, I should say, I need to thank Ariel at Squadcast again, because Ariel arranged this for me to talk to Dan. I said, does anybody have any contacts at Focusrite? She says, yeah, I do. I'll put you in touch with Dan. And she did. So thank you so much, Ariel. And again, Dan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. You can follow Crosswires on social media, on Twitter at CrosswiresMG. You can email podcast at crosswires.net. Make sure you check out crosswires.net for the show notes for this episode, as well as all our other fantastic episodes, and crosswires.net/YouTube for the YouTube channel. Make sure you leave your comments on the episode itself, and if you're a good pods listener, start a discussion there. Until the next time, thanks for listening.